Now, Glendora, this is episode 9. It's really toward the end. I'm giving a brief outline of what happened, which was quite tragic, really, in the end here. I don't know if it's the end. It's not the end, but I mean, it's he had a very bad point here. It was around 2007, 6 or 7. Following my explosive educational featured article in the Palm Beach Post, which I'm sure the bank and their attorneys were eager to retaliate. My article was published the weekend of Donald Trump's wedding, which attracted many prominent people from all over the world. I had tried to rent my co-op in Florida. However, it had to be done through the management office at the Laco Key Villas, which is the name of my complex where my co-op was, and the manager kept giving excuses that he couldn't rent it. However, I let friends of mine use it for a vacation, and they learned of many villas that had been rented through the management office for the owners. So the question was, of course, why couldn't he rent mine at all? So Glendora, it was unbelievable. One day while I was in New York, because I hadn't been using the villa that much, I received a telephone call one day from the management in Florida of the co-ops, and he appeared very gleeful as he told me my co-op was flooded with water and it was a total loss. Evidently, the water had been running day and night for around 5 days from a broken water machine hose, as they told me. I said to the head of my group, "What next? What will they do to me next?" Now, instead of crying, of course, I tried to kind of laugh, thinking, what fools these people are. How small can they get? Prying on a widow, of course, since they were aware of the fact that I was picketing and protesting to inform people as to what was going on with the legal firms and the banks, such as Bankers Trust, now known as Deutsche Bank, and White & Case legal firm, who, in my opinion, have their tentacles intertwined all over. Just as I discovered that the lawyer for the co-ops in Florida had worked for White & Case law firm, who had drafted my husband's will, as I understood from the people who do my research. And that's what they discovered, that White & Case, the lawyer for the villas was the same lawyer he had worked for White & Case. Now, one really has to put the puzzle together. It reveals that it's one big happy family working together. Now, I had many questions about the flood in my villa. One was, as I understand, the villas were supposed to be routinely checked when people were not there. And the second, my co-op is only around 100 feet from the manager's office on a well-traveled private road by the entrance gates. The water had to be running out of the doors, if it was up the walls a few feet, as I understand. For at least 5 days, the water had to be running. Now, the third point was someone using my wash machine. I understand from research that the chance of this happening is less than 1% from insurance company statistics. It reminds me of years before this. One owner who was on the board, I couldn't believe it, telephoned me in New York once and informed me that since I was not at the co-op very often, and for some time I wasn't there after my husband passed away, my villa was being used for an affair going on by the management and some of the employees at that time. Of course, it was hard for me to believe, but he did discover that, and he phoned me and told me. Now, the fourth thing is, when people are not using their co-op for a period of time, why isn't the valve closed to the wash machine? I understand later they made that ruling. And another question is, my co-op was a single standing home with a patio and a yard visible to everyone, with a swimming pool directly behind my home, of which many people used from the other co-ops in my complex. So not only did the lawyer for our complex previously work for White & Case Law Firm, but also there was the head of the trust department of Bankers Trust, Mr. William Wilkie, and he's the head of the Bankers Trust Department at Deutsche Bank. He attended many conferences at the Ritz-Carlton, which was across the street from my co-op on A1A, and knew all about me. The owner of the grounds asked me in a conversation, "Are you planning to file a claim for negligence against us?" I said I had not decided as yet. He also said, "Why don't you face reality?" Okay, what did he mean by that? Why don't you face reality? What does he mean? Give up? In other words, you will not get justice? Now, the restoration of my co-op home of 2,200 square feet took much time with the insurance agent. However, my group, trained in research, wanted everything in writing, and I did have a very good insurance company, so they did come through with all expenses after much work with written detail from my group. It involved unbelievable time, as I did a lot of my own shopping for replacements. It was a total loss treating mildew, etc., due to so much water damage to my water-soaked floors. Also replacing my Steinway grand piano, all appliances, etc., and then I stored other items like glassware and so forth. Finally, oh yes, the manager of all people, as I remember, recommended a contractor to do the work. Of course, knowing my group in New York, they wanted all answers to their questions about the replacement construction in writing. Finally, the contractor said he could not spend the time answering all the questions in writing. Consequently, he said to send him $25,000 deposit to buy the materials to start working. I, of course, was eager to get it started, since the co-op was filled with new appliances and crates and boxes of items delivered. So I sent the $25,000 deposit. My group then had second thoughts, since they didn't trust much of anything at this point. So they suggested I stop payment on the check with the bank immediately, before the check got into the contractor's hands. So I did. And my stop payment notice had arrived in time. However, the contractor had to know someone at the bank, because he cashed the check after the stop payment notice arrived, and as I recall, one of my group had something written on the back of the check similar to "written under duress." So why was this man still able to cash the check? The contractor would not return the money, even though we had no signed agreement and he hadn't started any work. Finally, he stated he would return $20,000 and keep $5,000 for his time. By this time, I had about had it and said no. There was no meeting of the minds and no agreement in any form. Excuse me. Now, we had a friend that we met through our protesting who was going down to Florida, and said he would call the contractor and talk to him. It ended up the contractor would not return any money, thinking it would cost me too much to hire an attorney and go to court. So that way he could keep it. I can't resist, Glendora, in telling another story at this time, and that is that the friend who went down to Florida to speak to the contractor was a grandson of Justin DePratt White, a co-founder of the White & Case Law Firm. And his mother was the daughter who was fighting in regard to a trust due them. He told us that when his grandfather, Mr. White, died, that Mr. Case, his co-founder partner, and his people raided Mr. White's office while the funeral was in process. And it is my understanding that they did some job on the money his grandmother and his mother's estate was supposed to receive. So you see, it's in White and Case's DNA, who drafted my husband's will. It's a small world, isn't it? The sharks eat their own. As we know, White and Case and the bank hijacked the estate. So it reminds me of Bankers Trust also, their segmentation, market segmentation, milk, exit, and ignore. They had their plans, and as I say, it's in their DNA. It's in their blood, and it must stop. It's not done just to me. As another victim said to me, Suzanne, we are not alone, and we are not crazy. Because that's the next thing. They like to say, oh, you're crazy. You're out of your mind. I might add, this other fella who said this is with another bank. Now back to my home. I could not get to the co-op due to demands on my time in New York. Was at a standstill with no contractor. I had some items stored and put in storage. I, of course, couldn't rent it, and I couldn't sell it. And it led to difficulty in keeping up with the maintenance and expenses. What a shame, since my husband gave me this home free and clear of any mortgage. This was all due to the bank not following the will and would not give me my inheritance, which also was, as the IRS said, my marital deduction. So as anyone could see, the money was there. As when Rutherford or White and Case said, there's so much money in this estate that it will never run out. So basically, they had in their plans to hijack the estate. Now, finally, they threatened foreclosure, of course, in Florida. Basically, I lost the villa. However, as I understand, the foreclosure process was seriously flawed, which is fraud on the court. Of course, it would again involve lawyers in the court, but that may happen, who knows? I inquired and had lawyers say, oh yes, we can settle this. Just send us $8,000 to $10,000 to start. Well, we know the game now, don't we? After some courtroom proceedings, the judge was required to send me some surplus money due me from the villa. However, he would not send it. I kept asking, would the judge, please, comply with this? He wouldn't send it. So it got to be, I guess, some time. I know it was several weeks from what I recall. So I finally got a hold of a female attorney suggested to me who had been up for judgeship. She was very understanding and got the money due me in short time for a nominal fee. I guess she knew the game, and she evidently felt something for me, that what I was going through. Now the courts are some racket. I actually heard of how lawyers have to pay a large price, sometimes into the thousands, I guess, to belong to the so-called club that all these judges belong to, so to speak. Then, as a member, they must go by what the group wants to do, as I've been told, how they want to settle things. And the magic circle, so-called, includes the banks, the attorneys, the judges, and the courts. They control everything, as I've been told. Now, it's not hard to believe any of this kind of thing any longer. But when you hear it, I mean, it just, it opens up your eyes again, and you think, my word, what next? So you see, I've had enough of this game. However, I've lost all my new appliances and thousands of dollars I invested into the stone-like tiles to replace the water-soaked floors and other items. Someone got some great present, believe you me. This all happened around 2007. I can't believe how time flies. Now, the other thing I want to put on this particular episode here is the other tragedy which happened, which was my New York home, which was around 2017. Now, knowing that things were not going well, I decided to hire a broker in New York. However, I believe he brought one prospect in a 3-year period, and he did not put the beautiful photo I had of the outside view of the house in the magazine to publicize it. It was like a vacant lot he wanted to put in. However, he could sense that I was not eager to sell, since my husband wanted me to stay there until my death, and there was plenty of money. As we know, the bank was not fulfilling their promise to my husband to form a trust to take care of his wife and provide me with income that I was entitled to. Now, the man in my church suggested years back that it would be better for me to get a loan instead of using my own money, which I did with the Bank of New York. Then when the judge in Supreme Court illegally went after me for legal fees, and actually I was due to get $100,000 back, but he went after me for more fees, it was all fixed. And he gave me an order to pay $210,000 he claimed I owed in legal fees, plus $150 interest, equaling $410,000. Or he would have the right to take all my possessions in both homes, would be taken from me if I didn't come up with the sudden amount of money, $410,000. So we finally got a private individual to loan me the money, but it was at 12% interest, which I paid for like 5 years, and it got to be a very high amount every month. I think it was near $5,000 a month or something. I don't know, $4,500 around. Now, after you have heard all this, I was paying the interest for years until one day the Bank of New York sent my check back. And now the Bank of New York was not the private loan that I got for $410,000. The Bank of New York was my first loan that the fella from my church has said, why not get that loan instead of using your personal money or any of your paintings. So the Bank of New York now, I was paying interest to them, which was much lower, but I went to the bank to pay my check one day, to bring my check, because I was paying every month. And they said that the computer indicated that they would not take my check. Now, this was my first loan. They were ahead of the loan of the private people. Now, the private individual was my second loan. So when things really get difficult, they threaten foreclosure. The first loan and the second loan. Now, the second loan, who was for the $410,000, got serious and brought me to court. I was pro se at the time. Later on, someone helped me out and got a lawyer to help me, but the judge finally admitted she had no jurisdiction over my matter. The legal person helping me said I should bring the bank into this mess as third party. As time went on, finally on January 3rd, 2017, I'm never alone, I might say. There's always a person or a group working in my basement or in my home. I don't like to be alone. Finally, on January 3, 2017, the person working in the basement, I was on the top floor, but they heard a noise at the back door. He ran up to check and asked them who they were. So he also asked them for papers, which they did not have. This was also in regard to the, obviously, it was the second loan, which they hadn't informed the first loan about it. So the first loan should have known about this, but they never informed them. They just thought they'd move in on me. So I heard things and words going back and forth until my person yelled at me, "Suzanne, call the police." So I did. I called the police. They came immediately, and after questioning them, they said to the intruders who came in, they said, "Well, you need papers." And the intruders left because they didn't have the proper papers. Then on March 22nd, 2017, they came at 10:30 a.m. Now, you remember the judge said to me she did not have jurisdiction over this matter. But anyway, they came again. Someone was in the basement. I was upstairs in my robe. Here comes 3 moving trucks. And again, my person in the basement, since as I say, I always had protection. He answered the back door, and he was asked if he was a tenant. He answered yes, and they physically, forcibly pulled him out of the house to a point where his hand was bleeding and I think his head partly. They were very rough with him. So my person asked for the papers, and they said, "We don't need any." They answered him as his hand was bleeding and so on, "Did you take any documents out of this house?" He said, "We scanned many papers that aren't here." So what were they really after? Were they after my documents? Because as I say, I had documents, boxes in every room in my house, and it wasn't really a small house. It was quite large. It had about 11 rooms. There were documents, boxes in every room, including the garage was half full. So it was around 10:30 a.m. It was a rainy, snowy day, around 32 degrees, and believe you me, I was a most elderly senior citizen. I don't like to give my age, but this was elder abuse of the highest order. I guess Bankers Trust, Deutsche Bank, and White & Case thought this will kill her. This will end her. There appeared to be several police dressed in plain clothes. They told me and one of my group we had to get out of the house immediately, and I know they had no inventory. They lined up in my bedroom while I had to get in my bathroom to get dressed. As I say, it was elder abuse of the highest order, a clear violation of my rights. And they kept saying, hurry up, get going." I had so much history and valuable items in the house. I had lived there for almost 50 years. Yes, I was 81 years old at that time. All because the bank wouldn't follow their promise to my husband. I was with my husband when he was arranging all of this with White & Case and Bankers Trust. What did Win Rutherford of White & Case and Bankers Trust and Eddie Jr. do with all the money? Nearly $100 million? Win, don't tell me I'm wrong. You know it's true. You remember. You said there's so much money here the estate will never run out. And Suzanne, you are the last one to get any money. When he said that to me, I think I was just speechless. I couldn't believe what he said. These people catch you off guard, and as a person you look at them like he can't mean that. So, as I say, Win was responsible. Don't blame Eddie, even though he's involved. You knew about Eddie. As executives at the bank, you were warned that you were to stop Eddie from stealing, basically. It will affect the estate, and they were warned of that by members in other executors in the bank. When we had depositions, they got these memos, interoffice memos that we saw that said, please stop Eddie Jr. from running everything because it will deplete the estate. It will take away from the estate. But they didn't listen. They just kept going over the option period, which my husband said was only a certain amount of time. But sure enough, they went over it. They gave Eddie, with all its arguments, they say, what was that in total of legal fees? That they sat with Eddie trying to negotiate some swindle that Eddie wasn't supposed to get. Now back to the thieves at my home. They didn't bother packing boxes. They simply threw things in the boxes, since some things were from one closet or room and would be in one box mixed with other things from another room. My husband's beautiful library, including important scores of music and my books also, important letters framed and valuable scores of music, original manuscripts. They lined up in my bedroom while I got dressed in my bathroom, as they kept saying, "Hurry up, hurry up." I remember I was hysterical. I said to them, "You will all suffer for this." I had missing designer clothes. I had in my basement closets of beautiful clothes I had, preserved. I had kept for many years and always designed clothes and so forth. And I had many of them in the basement closets, which I don't know what happened to them. If I found any of them, they were thrown in boxes and basically ruined. They said, "You are lucky we didn't throw everything out on the street," which we do sometimes. Then they added, "If you have no place to go, we can bring you to a shelter." You see, I was trash to them. Here I was a representative for the United States to Russia, and also received the Peace Medal when I performed at the UN. None of this matters. You see, with the political scene, this is how they treat anyone. Glendora, I guess God was with me, because I'm doing this tape and I'm still very normal reviewing this whole nightmare. I hope people learn from this, even though it's difficult to listen to. Some people I know can't stand to hear these things. But as my husband once said, you have no idea what that world is like out there. The mafia may be bad, but the world is just as bad, if not worse. My husband was a religious man and a believer. A couple friends drove up, including a TV station that someone informed, and someone had called a TV station and they were told I didn't pay my taxes. I got so upset I couldn't reason with the TV representative. He was trying to set me up, I feel, now as I look back. My taxes were paid. I couldn't bring myself to explain in detail. It was cold. I was sitting in my car. It was snowing and raining. They were taking my home that my husband and I had worked for, plus my valuable piano. I'm a Steinway artist also. How could White and Case, namely Win Rutherford, do this to me as a widow or to others? How many did he personally do this to? I know of some, connected with Bankers Trust Deutsche Bank, who have been robbed. Now, Glendora, I've gone through these two nightmares, and I believe it's now around 28 minutes in the end of this episode. So in the next episode, I will brief some of my thoughts about what happened and what took place in this whole nightmare. And I thank you very much, Glendora, for presenting this and trying to teach other people about what goes on in this world that many people are unaware of. Thank you.